himself again. Got himself in a terrible jam. Way down yonder in Vietnam. Put down your books and pick up a gun. We're gonna have a whole lot of fun. And it's 1, 2, 3. What we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. The next stop is Vietnam. It's 5, 6, 7. Open up early gates. Well, there ain't no time to wonder why. We're all gonna die. Now come on, Wall Street, don't be slow. I'm man, this is for a go-go. There's plenty good money to be made. Sliding argument to the trade. Just a little credit to the top of the bomb. God, I'll be it come. And it's 1, 2, 3. What are you fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up the gates. But I ain't no time to wonder why. Now come on, generals, let's move fast. No big chances, you're last. Time to go out and get those reds, because the only good economy is one that's dead. You know the peace can only be one when one long kingdom comes. Sing it! 1, 2, 3. Right, right, before. Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Louder! Big and damn. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up early gates. But I ain't no time to wonder what they are. This is people on how you expect to ever stop a war. You can't sing any better than that. There's about 300,000 of these fuckers out there. I want you to start singing. Come on. And it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. It's stop with me and now. It's 5, 6, 7. What's that for you? But I ain't just trying to wonder what they are. Say something off the walls too late. Jesus, one, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam. 5, 6, 7. Open up early gates. I ain't no time to wonder what they are. I'm hairy, high and low. Don't ask me why, don't know. It's not for lack of rain, like the Grateful Dead, darling. Long beautiful hair, shining, gleaming, steaming, flashing, waxing. Give me down to there, hair, shoulder length of all drop. Here, baby, there, mama, everywhere, daddy, daddy, show it long, it's got to fly. Fly in the breeze and get caught in the trees. Give a home to the bees in my hair. A home for bees, a hive for the buzzing bees. But that's for birds, there ain't no words for the beauty, splendor, the wonder of my hair. Show it long, it's got to fly. I want it long, straight, curly, fuzzy, snaggy, shaggy, ratty, matty, oily, greasy, fleecy, shiny, gleaming, steaming, waxing, waxing. Naughty, puppy, naughty, twisted, beady, granny. Flower, and confetti, tangle, tangle, and spaghetti. If you can, then my hair's too short. Down the here, down the there, down the there, down to where it's out by itself. When they see me in my cooler made of blonde, brilliant, invisible hair. My hair like Jesus walking, hallelujah, I'm roaring, hallelujah, Mary of the sun. I know my heart belongs. Show it long, it's got to fly. Show it long, it's got to fly. Show it long, it's got to fly. Hi, everyone. Okay, so today's our short class, and we have a debate today, and the debater is, let me share the screen with the lesson plan, and the debater is today Kang Tong-un against me, pro. So to South Koreans, America's defeat in Vietnam should have warned the Americans that they would lose in Afghanistan. So we have to devote enough time for that, and so we'll go to that very soon here.
And I was showing you some of the videos from the events and cultural events, including the Broadway musical Hair, which sort of encapsulates, articulates the spirit of the popular culture times among the youth, challenging and protesting against the Vietnam War, facing lots of opposition from their elders, their older generations, who you saw a reference to that at the very end of that Hair song. About why doesn't my mother love me? Because of their great intergenerational conflict between the younger and the older generations in terms of obeying the authorities when the authorities tell you to do something. So, and the Vietnam War remains a very sensitive topic because of American nationalism. And we've spent time talking about American nationalism and nationalism in general in this class. And of course, people, as we go back, as we've talked about previously, in this class, that it's human nature for people to want to have a positive self-image, right? We talked about how people want to have a positive self-image. People tend to self-identify with groups of people, including their nation. So they want to believe that their nation is good. And typically, if you lose a war, people want to believe that people lose wars who are on the wrong side. So if you lose a war, you must be a loser. You must be problematic. So. So America lost its supposedly lost its first war in the Vietnam War, and this has been a very sensitive topic politically because of the emotions surrounding American nationalism and American identity, and not just historically. It was really interesting to see how, for example, in the January 6th, 2021 insurrection in the U.S. Capitol, motivated by Trump to try to overturn the results of the presidential election that elected Joe Biden, that among the rioters that were attacking the Capitol, you saw something very interesting. And let's see, I can find this. I think I have it here. Don't I have it here? I think I do. Let me see 1 second here. I open up that image, and it's kind of an issue today in class today, because both classes are basically covering social movements, both the American history and the American foreign policy class. So, you know, when we talk about social movements and public opinion and protests, we talk about the Vietnam War. So this is what I'm going to show also next class, U.S. foreign policy class. This is from, let's see, when does it say that this was posted? So this is from 10 days after the insurrection, so January 16, referring to the January 6th riots. And what do you see here? You see the rioters, the pro-Trump protesters with the South Vietnam flag, the South Vietnam flag, the flag of South Vietnam, the country that America was fighting a war to defend. America lost 60,000 soldiers to try to keep this country from being unified with Vietnam after it was divided in 1954 at the Geneva Geneva Agreement, ending the French involvement and beginning America's involvement. And so this is the South Vietnam flag. And you can see it states here that the flag has become, why the defunct South Vietnam flag was flown at the Capitol riot. The flag has become a symbol for different things: anti-communism, U.S. imperialism, democracy, and recollection of the past. And also not mentioned here, perhaps because it's so common, you see this flag here, that you see the American flag here, but here you see another flag. And this is a banner that you often see in the United States, claiming that that America will not forget the well-being of the 2,000 or so Americans who are missing in action and have not been accounted for from the Vietnam War. MIAs, missing in action. So let me see if I can go to Wikipedia and open that up. And if you go to the United States, you'll probably see that flag at some point. And let me see if I can call up this flag now. Yeah, here, yeah, this is the flag. So you can see, I think you can see this, just to make sure that I am sharing the screen. Let me make sure that I share again. So you see this flag frequently in the United States. You'll see it in front of police stations, in front of fire engine stations where their firefighting crews are stationed, National League of Families, prisoners of war missing in action. And supposedly the claim is that there are some number of Americans who are missing from the war. And the claim is that maybe perhaps, or the concern is that a number of these people are still alive and are being held secretly in Vietnam as some sort of bargaining or some sort of bargaining chip or leverage against the United States. And this is, again, just highlighting the sensitivity, the emotional sensitivity of the Vietnam War in American political discourse, because you see it even here, right? This is in front, on top of the U.S. Capitol. This is the U.S. Capitol building for the legislature, the Congress of the United States. This is the official flagpole. So there you see the American flag, and there you see that Vietnam MOA, missing in action, a prisoner of war flag. So it indicating something about the sensitivity of the Americans in losing that war. And of course, the response of intense American nationalists, particularly those who supported Trump, is that, well, America may have lost the Vietnam War, but it won the big war. It may have lost the Vietnam battle. The Vietnam was a battle in the Cold War against communism, against the Soviet Union. And the Americans may have lost that battle, but they won the war. And they won the war in spite of Howard Zinn, in spite of the New Left, like Gar Alperovitz and Noam Chomsky, in spite of all those college students singing "Hair, Hair," rebelling against authority, questioning the American commitment to its allies, undermining and attacking all American values in terms of traditional American values that made America great. In spite of Howard Zinn, in spite of his followers and his students who became teachers and college professors, we still won the war. But still, there are those decadent people, degenerates, supporting Howard Zinn, who undermine America's will and determination to do what is necessary for America to play the proper role in the world as the leader for freedom and democracy around the whole world. You know, that's Daniel Flynn's perspective. You wrote the midterm paper about Flynn versus Zinn. In spite of Howard Zinn, in spite of their attempts to undermine American will and determination to do what is necessary to defend its prestige and pride and leadership in the world, to defend democracy and freedom. So, all right, so that's a nice introduction, perhaps, to our debate. And in 1973, the United States pulled out of Vietnam, and then also the United States then abolished mandatory military service. So since 1973, at the same time the Americans left the war, the American military has been staffed by volunteers. Unlike Korea, American military service is a voluntary, professional enterprise. So this loss in Afghanistan happens today when, unlike in Vietnam, the American military is staffed by people who chose to join the military. Americans were not drafted, were not forced to go fight in the Army or the Navy or the Air Force. They chose to join the Army or the Navy or the Air Force. And so they may well have been sent to Afghanistan or Iraq, and a few thousand people died in those wars in the last 20 years. More have been injured. But the American view is, of course, those people chose to join the military, unlike in Vietnam, where people were drafted to join the military. So before I forget, let's go to the attendance. And so we do the smart attendance, and your number is 899. 899 is your smart attendance number, 899. So let me put that in the chat box, 899. And okay, so you can sign up for that. And let's, I think now, that's a good point to go to the debate. But I wanted to show you, since a lot of you are fans of John Travolta. By the way, you saw Woodstock was a well-known outdoor rock and roll event, of a festival of over 3 days celebrating rock and roll and protest music against the Vietnam War was a big part of that. So there you saw Jimi Hendrix playing Star Spangled Banner, and the song Hair. And but I also wanted to show you, as the American military then moved towards a complete volunteer form of military that they had to then advertise to encourage Americans to volunteer for the war. And the Americans had to volunteer for the war required that the American military begin advertising to advertise the war. And of course, one of the our famous stars today is John Travolta in one of these early advertisements, if I can find it here.
Professor?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't think the smart attendance did go through.
899. 899 is your number.
I cannot find the.
Oh, you know, I did the wrong class. Thank you. I did the wrong class. Okay, so I did the I hit the wrong button. Okay, so here we go. Thank you. So we go add, and the number is 891. 891 is your smart attendance number. So 891, let me put that in the chat. 891. Okay, so this is mistaken. 891 is your smart attendance number. Thank you for informing me. And let's see if I can find John Travolta military. And I don't think I can find it right now, but I'll find it another time. For the other class, I'll show it there. But let's go now to the debate, to our debate, and we will go to, let me see, let's go back to sharing the screen, and go here, share screen, and okay, so here we have Kang Tong-un. So Kang Tong-un, are you there? Kang Tong-un?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
I'm here.
Okay, so I will now allow you to share a screen, multiple people to share a screen. So if you have a screen items to share, if you have a PowerPoint presentation or a Microsoft Word file that you want to share, you can share it. I've enabled that. So you might want to get that set up and opened, and so that you can have it ready to go when it's your turn to speak as Khan. And I'm going to set my timer here for 6 minutes, because I will speak up to 6 minutes maximum, and then Khan will speak for up to 6 minutes maximum, and then Pro will rebut for 4 minutes, and then Khan will rebut and conclude for 7 minutes maximum. And then Pro has the last word. So let me get that started up, and let me go back again to the share screen and to the okay, so I'm going to start here, and I'm going to start now. Okay, so the question is, to debate to South Koreans, America's defeat in Vietnam should have warned the Americans that they would lose in Afghanistan. And yeah, I mean, I think obviously that the United States was confronting forces of nationalism, which it did not fully comprehend or understand in Vietnam. And then the Americans, when they lost the war in Vietnam, you know, again, as we highlighted earlier, as the Americans lost the war in Vietnam, this is a very emotionally sensitive topic to your typical American citizen. So the Americans don't want to believe that they made a mistake in that war. They don't want to believe that they killed thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of Vietnamese on the basis of a mistaken assumption that the fighting and conflict in Vietnam was due to trouble exported from the Soviet Union. The Americans don't want to believe that they were fighting against the freedom of the Vietnamese people. You know, the Americans were told by the American leadership, by the presidents of the United States, that they had to fight in Vietnam to fight for the freedom of the Vietnamese people. And fighting for the freedom of the Vietnamese people was necessary ultimately to defend the freedom of all people in Asia, and then ultimately in the world. Again, and the assumption was that the Soviet Union was instigating this trouble in Vietnam, that the Soviet Union, through its spies and agents, including Ho Chi Minh in Korea, in Vietnam, were basically following orders from Stalin, trying to carry out instability and a coup to take power in the country and add it to the Soviet empire, And Ho Chi Minh was not a nationalist. Ho Chi Minh was a communist insurgent wanting to become ruler dictator of his own country with the help of the Soviet Union. And as a result, Vietnam would become a part of the enslaved peoples of the Soviet Empire, the way that the Polish people and the Hungarian people and the North Korean people and the other peoples of communist world were part of the enslaved peoples of the Soviet Communist Empire. And that the Americans were fighting to preserve freedom for both the Vietnamese and for the Asian, all Asia and all of the world. And then as the Americans entered that war, and it became increasingly difficult for them to understand the war, because if they were so obviously on the right side of history with all of their weapons and all of their money and all of their technology, plus they are on the right side, then they should win. Then they should have been able to defeat the bad guys. And they couldn't win. The bad guys, the Vietnamese resistance would not finish, would not end, just like it did not end in Afghanistan. Because of course the Americans told themselves when they invaded Afghanistan, they're trying to bring about freedom and liberty for the Afghan people against the oppressive and tyrannical and terroristic Taliban. And in both cases, they were wrong. But admitting that they're wrong is very painful, because because people's national identity is often very important and very powerful for them. So to believe that your nation is committing basically crimes involving massive killing and destruction is for many, many people very difficult to accept. And so as we saw as a result of the Vietnam War, that America went through a stage that's highlighted in your final exam question in the 1970s of self-doubt, not only because of the defeat in Vietnam, but all of the elements that surrounded, all the events that surrounded the Vietnam War. I mean, Richard Nixon, for example, when he was orchestrating criminal activities to undermine his opponents, political opponents in the United States, leading up to US election in 1972, told himself he had to do this because he was trying to demonstrate to the communists in Moscow and Beijing and Hanoi that he was firmly in control of the United States, that he has the will, the Americans had the will and determination to do what was necessary to force Vietnam and the other communist actors, Hanoi in North Vietnam and the other communist actors in the world, to compromise with the United States, because despite all of the conflicts, all of the protests, all of the hostility by people like Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky and Gar Alperovitz and Joe McDonald and Jimi Hendrix and all those college students protesting and going to concerts at Woodstock, despite all that public evidence of dissent and resistance, that Richard Nixon was in charge. Richard Nixon would not be forced to compromise, would not be undermined, and that he was in power, and that he needed to demonstrate this fact to Moscow, Hanoi, and Beijing, and all the other communist actors. So that was the justification for Richard Nixon and his supporters, that we're trying to get peace with honor. That was the term that the Americans used to describe what they were trying to do in Vietnam, without looking like they were defeated. But of course, Hanoi could see all of these protesters, all of these dissent going on in the United States against the American involvement. And they thought if they continued to fight and continue to resist, the Americans would eventually give up. And that's why, and of course, later, of course, the Americans could argue to themselves that they won the Cold War. So the Vietnam War was not really a lost war. It was one battle in the Cold War the Americans won in spite of Howard Zinn. And that's one of the reasons why the Americans were blinded by their hubris in invading in Afghanistan and thinking that they could this time do in Afghanistan what they did in Germany at the end of World War II and in Japan at the end of World War II, that they should be able to do what they did there in Afghanistan, because the Soviet Union is gone. And there's no longer allies that would support America's enemies, big superpower countries like the Soviet Union to support America's enemies, that was supposedly the reason why the Americans lost that war in Vietnam. But of course, the world is different, and the Americans would be able to impose their will in Afghanistan, especially because the Soviet Union is gone. Okay. Okay, Kang Tong-un, you can now make your presentation, and do you have something to show to the rest of the class?
Yes, I have
Okay,
PowerPoint.
so let me go back to, I'm trying to, okay, so please, I made screen sharing available, so I'm looking for your video. What are you showing it now?
Okay. Can you see my?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. Okay. So let me start.
Yep.
Okay. America's defeat in Vietnam is not relevant to defeat in Afghanistan. Both wars have different backgrounds, social environment, and factors. First, the purpose of the war is different. The primary goal was to kill Osama bin Laden, who committed the 9/11 terrorist attack. In addition, the US goal was to dismantle Al-Qaeda, organization to which Osama bin Laden belongs, and to oust the Taliban regime to remove Al-Qaeda's base in Afghanistan. It was not a conflict between ideologies in the first place, since it was retaliation against terrorism. NATO, Britain, and the Soviet Union supported the US externally. In other words, the cause of the war in Afghanistan was the terrorism of Al-Qaeda, and the result of this was the Afghanistan war for the purpose of retaliation. Since the starting point was different, there can be no opinion to object to the war in Afghanistan, taking lessons from the Vietnam War. Second, there is no reason for Vietnam War to warn that the USA will lose Afghanistan war because the purpose and reason for the US being stationed in each country are different. In the Vietnam War, the United States was being stationed for preventing the spread of communism. The US drew backlash from the Vietnamese people for discriminate killing. However, in Afghanistan war, protected the people of Afghanistan from the Taliban that caused terrorism and continued a long war with international help such as Northern Alliance and the United Nations. One of the most representative causes of America's defeat in the Vietnam War is that the United States was not supported by the Vietnamese people. Also, the United States committed a civilian massacre for a civil war with Vietnam. They sprayed defoliant and killed weak people such as women, young children, and the elderly people. On the other hand, the Afghanistan war continued as the Taliban, that the US continued to attack civilians and do guerrilla warfare, and even after the US ousted the Taliban regime. It's the opposite of the Vietnam War. Third, the situation before the outbreak of the Iraq War was just before the removal of the Taliban. It means a victory, but the United States invaded Iraq, and both wars in Afghanistan and Iraq put the US a huge economic burden on the United States. It also failed to extinguish the Taliban and caused a prolonged war. It's a different situation when the US got worsened gradually in the Vietnam War. Yes, yeah, I finish.
Oh, okay, and of course, you can ask questions and get extra credit if you get a point. If you ask a question, and just I'll note that if I forget, remind me if you ask a question. All right, so but of course you have some time to think about if you're going to ask questions, and so now it is my turn to rebut Khan, and let me pause and go back to keep a time here. All right, so I'm starting now. So ladies and gentlemen, of course, I know, of course, that there are fundamental differences. We know that there are fundamental differences between Vietnam and the Arab and Muslim world. Afghanistan case, the shock of that loss. I mean, after 20 years of American involvement, pouring in hundreds of billions of dollars, not just for military aid, but like, for example, development aid, funding non-governmental organizations, claiming to support the development of educational systems and the like. And of course, a lot of that money was wasted, and it went to corrupt individuals who cooperated with the United States, with the Americans not having a clear understanding of what was going on in Afghanistan. But that was true also in Vietnam as well. Obviously, the Americans did not understand why they were involved, what was the political conditions in Vietnam, just as if they did not know or could not understand or were unable to understand the political conditions in Afghanistan. Now, how Osama bin Laden said, all I know in terms of Osama bin Laden's involvement in that terrorist attack on the United States on September 11, 2001, is a video clip in which he claimed that his followers carried that out. Most of those that organization of those terrorist attacks was done by Saudi immigrants, Saudi and other students in Germany, living and working and studying in Germany. I don't think there was one Afghan involved in those terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. 15 of the hijackers, I think if you can find this here, September 11 hijackers, there must be a Wikipedia site entry for that. If we go here, here you can see the Wikipedia entry for this. It says here, the hijackers in the September 11 attacks were 19 men affiliated with the militant group Al-Qaeda. They hailed from 4 countries, 15 of them from Saudi Arabia, America's close ally, Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud. 2 were from United Arab Emirates, another close American ally. 1 from Lebanon and 1 from Egypt. Nobody from Afghanistan, nobody from Iraq. So why were these people so angry that they carried out the suicide attack against the United States? Because they believe that the Americans are keeping the Saudi royal family and other aristocratic traditional feudal authorities in power in places like Saudi Arabia, in places like the oil sheikdoms, in places like also the conservative anti-Muslim secularist dictatorship in Egypt, that the Americans basically are collaborating with the traditional ruling elite in those countries in the Middle East to prevent nationalism. See, the Americans are at war in the Middle East against pan-Arabism and pan-Islamism. America's wars are against pan-Arabism and pan-Islamism. The effort to unify all Arabs in one state after they're divided by the British and the French. Those borders between Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, those weren't drawn by those people. They were drawn by the British and the French. And then and Israel was created under British hegemony. And so from their perspective, America, the Saudi and royal family and traditional rulers in the Middle East, and Israel all allied to oppress and divide and oppress the Arab and Muslim peoples of the world. And so the Americans are allied with traditional rulers in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and elsewhere and in Jordan, like they were allied with the traditional ruling feudal authorities in Vietnam against Vietnamese nationalism. And they lost there. Now, will they lose in the Middle East? We'll see. Okay, so let me go now to the Khan, and now Khan will rebut and conclude.
Okay.
And you can share your screen again if you'd like.
It's okay. Since the Vietnam War was a long-term war for about 10 years, the prolonged period in Afghanistan can naturally be reminiscent of the Vietnam War. Furthermore, the US military withdrew first at the Vietnam War and also gradually withdrew from Afghanistan. However, as I mentioned earlier, the Afghanistan War has a different essence than the Vietnam War. Therefore, I don't think it is appropriate to warn that the Vietnam War for the prevention of the spread of ideology during the Cold War era be used to the Afghanistan war as a punishment for terrorism.
Any questions? Anybody have questions they want to ask? If not, I will now rebut and I will conclude. I have the last word. I don't think ideology is really what's driving American involvement in the Middle East, or what's driving American involvement in Vietnam, or what is driving the Vietnamese nationalists or the pan-Arab and pan-Islamist nationalists. What's driving this conflict in Vietnam and in the Middle East is nationalism. Now, nationalism can associate with different values, like it can associate with liberal values, like we saw, for example, how Polish nationalists in 1989, they were favor of democracy and elections because they were being dominated by totalitarian imperialist power, the Soviet Union, Moscow. So the ideology of the enemy of the Soviet Union was the United States. The United States' formal ideology was democracy, capitalism. So it would not be surprising that you would find that nationalists in Eastern Europe, like in Poland and Bulgaria, under the communist period, would talk in terms of liberalism, capitalism, and democracy. But we can see that nationalism associates with different values. Nationalism is basically a strategy. It's basically a strategy for achieving your ultimate desired future. And what these people want in the Middle East is national self-determination. When, of course, the Americans and the Soviets and the Chinese are often working to control the countries through collaborationists locally that work with the Americans or with the Soviets or the Chinese to control the country on their behalf. Because in the era of nationalism, if you're openly occupying countries the way Japan occupied Korea, or the way the Germans occupied France in World War II, you generate lots of hostility, and that raises the cost of occupation. So if you're going to try to control a country and a political system and keep it in your sphere of influence, belonging to the Soviet Union or the United States or whomever, you try to control it indirectly and covertly behind the scenes, because that lessens the obviousness of the control and therefore reduces resistance. And because resistance means increased cost. So when the Americans just invaded Afghanistan, that was too blatant. Obviously, the Americans tried to persuade the Afghan people, like they did in Vietnam, that, oh yes, the leadership of Afghanistan represents the will of the Afghan people, because we had elections. I think they had 2 or 3 elections in Afghanistan, or they tried to while the Americans were there. They had tried to organize elections in South Vietnam as well, but those elections were organized by the Americans, and it didn't work. It didn't convince the opposition. It didn't convince the Afghan people that the leaders of Afghanistan were Afghanis. They were basically Afghanis who were collaborating with the Americans. So my question to you is, do you think that the South Vietnamese authorities have overcome, or they face a similar problem? Because that has been a claim that came up in the summertime. And when the Americans left Afghanistan, there were some blog posts. I saw reported on Korean television down when I was at Trust Gym. I saw being posted blog posts that some American commentators were claiming that if the Americans left South Korea, if they took all of their soldiers and all their military bases out of South Korea, that the South Korean government would collapse and it would be presumably unified under North Korea. Is that true? Do you think that's accurate? Or do the South Korean authorities really have the power and legitimacy that Koreans believe, that those people, Moon Jae-in or Park Geun-hye or Park Chung-hee or Lee Myung-bak, that these people really do represent the will of the South Korean people? And that's a question, because again, as we mentioned, I think in the class on Monday, you saw many people, that neoconservatives like Gene Kirkpatrick and Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz, they pointed to South Vietnam. I'm sorry, they pointed to South Korea, and they say South Korea is the successful case of American nation building, state building in the international environment. We can do in Iraq and Afghanistan what America achieved in South Korea. Is that really accurate? Can they do in Iraq what the Americans supposedly did in South Korea? And so this has been a very interesting topic for me to think about and write about, and it's a very controversial topic. And so of course, the claim was that America failed in South Vietnam because South Vietnam is part of Vietnam, which is part of the Asian mainland, which is it's impossible to cut off supplies to the communist guerrillas and the communist army through Cambodia and Laos into Vietnam, and that they were being supported by the Soviet Union and China. And so, America should be able to do in Iraq what it did in Germany and Japan at the end of World War II, because the Cold War is over. Who's going to help the Mujahideen, the Taliban in Afghanistan? Who's going to help America's opponents in Iraq? There's no more Soviet Union that's going to give weapons and guns to America's enemies to kill American soldiers. It's gone. The Soviet Union is gone. And I heard those kinds of statements in when I was in Bulgaria, talking to Bulgarians. Well, this is different from Vietnam because the Americans are now in Afghanistan, and there's no big power, superpower that's going to arm America's enemies to fight the Americans. And they turned out to be wrong. The Americans still lost. Okay, so clearly the Americans made mistakes, and they haven't learned from the mistakes that they made in Vietnam, because they don't want to learn. Okay, that's that's my statement. So if nobody has any questions, I think what we can do now is go now to Cyber Campus and go to vote. And okay, so who won the debate? And make sure, I gotta make sure I'm sharing the screen here, and go here, share the screen. So please vote as to who won the debate, and this is anonymous. Oh, it looks like I'm gonna win. I'm sorry, Kangtoon. I didn't mean to win. I was just a sign pro. I could have argued con too, but I was a sign pro. Oh, I'm sorry, Kangtoon. I'm so sorry. Okay, so there are the results there. And then we have another one. So now I would also like you to grade the debate. Ta-da! So please grade the debate. And this is also anonymous. Okay. And we'll do that for 15 seconds. Okay, so I guess so in the time remaining, what else I want to make sure that I give you some participation credit. And let me see what I have here in terms of participation credit. I'm wondering, I think, what did I have set up here? I have something else. What's this? Oh, what's this? So why do I have this here? I'm trying to remember why I set this up. I think I think, well, I guess in terms of what to highlight here, let me highlight what the mistake the Americans, I would argue, made in Vietnam. That the United States is a country that was born modern, right? The people that came to the United States chose to come to the United States in terms of the creation of the United States. But typically, the Americans became involved in the Cold War in Vietnam and in the Middle East and Asia and Africa and South America, when these societies until the 20th century had been politically traditional and parochial and non-participatory. But then you saw the rise of nationalism, along with the rise of the demand to participate among the mass populations in these countries to participate in politics. And with that rise in demand of political awareness and mass political awareness of the fact that human beings can shape and develop and determine the course of their own community's future, and the demand to do so accompanies the rise of nationalism. So the Americans became enemies of Vietnamese nationalism, and they were defeated. And now the Americans are opposed to Arab and Islamic nationalism. And the question is, of course, how much cost? Not all nationalist movements succeed. You know, in places like in some nationalist movements that are not very powerful, like don't have a strong sentiment, they fail, like Pan-Slavism, the move in the 19th century to unify all Slavs in one state, or Pan-Turanism early in the 20th century to unify all Turkic peoples from Mongolia to Istanbul in one Turkic state. Those movements failed. So the question is, how strong is Pan-Arabism? And we're seeing a test of it right now. Military capabilities do make a difference in the ability of countries in certain contexts. Like, for example, I think one of the reasons why the Americans were able to battle to a status quo in Korea was partly because, you know, the South Korea basically is an island with a small demilitarized zone linking North and South Korea, and Americans could use their power advantages to fight that war. But in other places, you see that the Americans did not military technology advantage was not sufficient. For example, in Vietnam and also in Afghanistan, despite America's incredible military technology and wealth. Again, the Americans got tired of paying the price, the costs of trying to impose their will in Afghanistan, and they simply withdrew from Afghanistan. But I'm telling you a story of nationalism and the rise of nationalism. But during the Vietnam War itself, there was, an awareness among many people that somehow the Americans made a serious mistake. But there was great disagreement among the Americans as to what that mistake was. What was the problem? Why was not the Americans involved in this war? And Howard Zinn gave you an answer. He said, well, that the Americans became involved in Vietnam because they were seeking to exploit and dominate the resources of Vietnam, Asia, and the world, and that this was also providing opportunities for the military-industrial complex to make money through fighting that war by supplying the U.S. government with weapons and guns, and also trying to control American society in a period where more and more people are beginning to question it and America's involvement in all aspects of world affairs. I mean, I heard this morning that on one news report on Democracy Now!, this one analyst said the Americans have 750 military bases around the world, 750 military installations around the world outside the United States, and another 400 in the United States. So there's this great American involvement around the world and this resistance emerging. Howard Zinn's book is all about resistance, as you mentioned in your report. So, but in terms of explaining what was the problem, why was Vietnam problem continuing? Why was the war happening? Why couldn't the Americans get out? Why were the Americans there? There was great conflict and disputes in the United States as to what was the problem in Vietnam. Some people said it was because America did not have the will and determination to do what was necessary to win that war, that there were mistakes made by foolish presidents. But then, of course, there was another challenge emerging among people represented by the New Left. And we've talked about the New Left, and we highlighted how Howard Zinn is an example of the New Left. They, including Howard Zinn and others, but including many people on American college campuses, began to question the fundamental assumptions about America's political system and America's democracy, particularly around that notion of how could America get involved in this war and kill all of these people and not be able to get out? What's going on? Why politically is this going on? What is, how do we explain? And so, one way to look at what was going on in the Middle East, in the United States at this time, was that there was a challenge to the political control system, the political regime in the United States. So this is a typology for understanding political regimes in South Korea, in the United States, in the Soviet Union, in China, in Germany. It's a very general, very abstract, I should say, very abstract understanding of the nature of control systems. So in this inclusive typology of control systems, there are four mechanisms by which the people, dominate a society, control everybody else, right? Do what I say if I'm a member of the authorities, or I will put you in jail, torture you, kill you, I will punish you, coercion, right? Do what I say, I will hurt you. Or do what I say and I will pay you. I will give you economic and career benefits. So be a good boy, be a good girl, obey the rules, and you will have a nice career and a nice material standard of living. So utilitarian control. Do what I say or do what I ask you because you love America, and I, whether it be Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or George W. Bush, I represent America. I'm asking you to go to war in Iraq because we have to fight the terrorists in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? So this is active manipulation of nationalist self-identity symbols. Symbol manipulation, typically national self-identity, romantic symbols of self, that we are Americans, we must go to war. And when the president tells us to go to war, and the rally around the flag effect. And then the normative habitual control is basically people obeying the authorities because they don't participate in politics. They just habitually obey the system of authority norms that exist in society because they don't even think about politics. They don't pay attention to politics, or pay very little attention to politics. So this is the control system in the United States. And this came under became under attack as a result of the draft, the fighting the Vietnam War, and the resistance to doing what you were told and obeying the authorities when the authorities said you have to go serve in the army and go fight in Vietnam. And this is a very stable system. And you can see that typically most people, they live their lives, they focus on their families, their careers, and then this comes under attack. And the control system comes under attack, led partly by African Americans demanding their civil rights, along with the fact that African Americans are disproportionately represented in the military. If you're a wealthy or smart white person, you could typically find a way to avoid going to Vietnam. You could go to the college, for example. If you went to college, you could not be drafted to go fight in the war in Vietnam as long as you stayed in college. So lots of white men, in particular, white men found a way to go to college and stay in college and avoided having to go fight in Vietnam. But a lot of African Americans who were poor and didn't have a good education because of segregation and bad educational systems of segregation, they couldn't avoid the war. So you saw a decline in normative habitual control. This comes under attack. Normative habitual control comes under attack in the United States. So how do the authorities respond? They upped coercion. We already covered the Kent State shootings in the United States and protest against the expansion of the war into Cambodia in 1970. They tried to placate African Americans by passing civil rights legislation, and they stopped the military draft. And so for lots of African Americans, they were co-opted. If they were articulate leaders of the civil rights movement, a lot of them got co-opted and got good jobs. So, but the youth are the ones who were the main opposition in the turbulent 1960s and 70s. Their slogan was amnesty for draft avoiders, people that found a way to avoid the draft. Maybe they fled the country, went to Canada. Amnesty, give women the right to control their sexuality, abortion, make abortion legal, and take drugs, even though you shouldn't do that. And of course, the response was to attack them, these young people, as being wimpish, unpatriotic, nervous Nellies. And this would be Daniel Flynn would emerge out of this, right? Attacking these college professors and their college students, challenging the American political system that won the Cold War and saved the world from communism. So just to conclude here, because I want to give you some participation credit, how do you respond to the statement? Please respond to the following statement. South Korean society respects intellectuals like college professors more than American society does, generally speaking. Strongly agree, neutral cannot decide, disagree, strongly disagree. So please vote. And so we have just a few seconds. So, okay, we have to close the class because I got to go get set up for the other class in K257. So I'm going to have to stop the class, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.